All right. City of Salem. Start over. City Council Committee on Public Health, Safety, and Environment will meet in person on Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023 at 6 p.m. for the purpose of discussing a draft ordinance to create a composting ordinance. This meeting will be held in City Council Chambers, 93 Washington Street, Salem, Massachusetts, second floor. Individuals may listen, view, or participate remotely in the meeting via remote participation platform called Zoom, and either through the following ways. Please click the link below, join the webinar, password 702031, or telephone 877-853-5257, or toll free 888-475-4499, webinar ID 897-2743-5060. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technology means. In the event we're unable to do so, matters not requiring a public hearing will be posted on the City of Salem's website, an audio or video recording transcript and other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. On our agenda tonight, as we discussed, it is a draft ordinance to create a composting ordinance. Tonight from the committee, we have Councilor Cohen, Councilor McLean, and absent, we have Councilor Merkel and Councilor Watson-Felt from the committee. And I'd like to let everyone know in Zoom land that we do have two people of the public here. We have two business owners. We have Patrick Schultz of All Souls and Kathleen Rogers of Spitfire Tacos as well. I do. Did you hear any of that? Let's see. Let's see. Can you hear me now? Let's see. Yeah. All right. All right. So with that, I'll start it off. We do have our draft ordinance here. Share screen. Okay. All right. So real quickly, I'll jump it off here. So this ordinance is going to be about municipal buildings and our businesses. We'll start with municipal buildings. I do have a letter from our waste reduction coordinator that we're going to read into the record as well. But before I get into that, a little bit of dialogue. When we started this draft ordinance, we did have schools in here. And after some long conversations with the school committee, with Councilor Cohen as well, and our superintendent, Dr. Schreich, we did come to an agreement that I believe the schools will compost on their own through policy. So we will not be introducing this as an ordinance with the schools in it. So with that, when it's concerning municipal buildings, it's going to really come down to a couple buildings here in City Hall Annex, the DPS. So with that, let me just read this letter into the record, and it'll kind of explain where we're at with municipal, and then we'll head with our businesses. May 3rd, this is from Janelle Rolk, May 3rd, 2023. Dear City Council, as a waste reduction coordinator for the City of Salem, I am pleased that a discussion is taking place regarding food waste. In this role, I am working on initiatives to reduce solid waste tonnage by Salem by coordinating events such as the Book Swap, Repair Cafe, Textile Drive, and more. I am also attending events and participating in speaking opportunities at Salem Public Schools, the Housing Authority, farmers markets, and other community events. In addition, to encourage the practice of reusing, proper recycling, composting is a major area of focus in my conversations with our community. Combating climate change is the largest benefit to composting food waste. By diverting food waste from solid waste stream, greenhouse gas emissions are drastically reduced. Instead of food waste is turned into nutrient-rich soil. The City of Salem has an opportunity to make a massive positive environmental impact by raising awareness in our community of importance by composting. While I cannot speak to the business owner piece of this proposed ordinance, I do believe there are a handful of municipal buildings that can implement composting food waste with little effort. These buildings include City Hall Annex, DPS, Salem Public Library, multiple fire stations, and police headquarters. Locations such as Forest River Park, Willows, McGrath Park will need to be addressed separately and likely further down the line. I would be honored to be a part of the increasing compost programs throughout the beautiful city. There will be an important educational component in this initiative, and a clear plan must create how municipal composting will be introduced, monitored, and maintained. I can say with confidence that I am able to and willing to partake in introducing and maintaining composting programs to the municipal buildings stated above. I look forward to working with you on this initiative. Janelle Roque, Waste Reduction Coordinator, City of Salem. So, Councilor Cohen.
Are you done for now? Thank you, Chair Varela. In 2013, I was hired as the city's first, at the time, mandatory recycling enforcement coordinator. And during the 3 years I did that, we received a grant to do residential composting free of charge, free bins, free pickup for 18 months. And we were able to extend that a little bit further. We did extensive outreach, myself and other people with the city. And although we were able to do 1,500 pickups, we never got past 1,200. Since that program went away and people have to pay for their compost bins and pickup, we've probably lost maybe 600 or so of the 1,200. So education is really a key factor. I do also want to state that Ms. Roque's concept about how this helps the climate, mitigate the climate crisis is really important. So when food is deposited in a landfill, it becomes methane. Methane is about 40 times more harmful to our environment than carbon, and the only way that we can mitigate the climate crisis is to reduce carbon significantly, because these contribute more than anything else to the increased temperature of the earth. And that's what amounts to the climate crisis. So I'm very excited as a counselor now to work with Councilor Varela and McLean and other people on the council to start the process of educating people through a municipal program. I also feel like one of the real advantages to this is that we pay a lot of money to remove our trash and recycling. And a significant amount of our trash is compostable items. It's not just food, but there's a lot of things that can go in a compost bin, like paper towels and gum and, other things that are not necessarily food items, but they do contribute significantly to the weight. We don't have any data in the city, but I believe in some communities it is a higher ratio than people would expect. So we pay per ton of trash to be removed from the city, and anything that we can divert into composting is a real benefit. I do also want to commend Chair Varela for coming up with a concept that hopefully will, through grants or other kind of funding, be able to implement at some point, which is to be able to process our own composting at some point. And that would not only enable us to expand the program better to residential, but it would enable us to create revenue, which would help us offset some of the costs for whatever trash and recycling hauler we use. So I'm a big fan of this, and once again, I appreciate very much, Chair Varela, you bringing this ordinance to the council.
Thank you, Councilor Cohen. So with that, we're going to really quickly go through this ordinance right here. So with this, it does have a component of education, not only for, let's say, the director who's responsible in the city level, but also the manager or the business owner. This will ensure that there's a very vague training on letting new hires know and existing hires or existing employees that this is what we're doing with composting. So with that, there's not a huge lift, I don't believe, with city buildings, but the biggest lift is going to be with our businesses. I was able to talk to about 14 food service establishments the last couple of days, ranging from small operators to operators that have multiple restaurants with high capacity seating as well. And going over the concerns, it seems like most of them can be mitigated by just a little bit of education. But again, this is a very big conversation, and we need to have our business owners let us know what they're thinking about it. What are the thoughts and concerns, how to implement this. So with that, I think we should definitely start out with our two attendees here, Mr. Schultz and Ms. Rogers. If you guys would like to get up and kind of tell us what you're thinking about the thoughts and concerns about composting. Oh, and you have your hand up? Yeah. So you're going to state your name for the record and your address.
Okay. My name's Kathleen Rogers, and I own Spitfire Tacos at 105 Lafayette Street.
Awesome.
And we started composting about almost a year ago. And it did take some teaching to the employees, and it took a few months to really get it down. But once we did, we were actually saving lots of money. We produce way less trash. Most of our waste is food. So yeah, all in all, I think that it's a no-brainer for businesses to kind of jump on.
Awesome. Ms. Rogers, I had a question. As far as the expense of the composting program and your general solid waste contract, can you explain how you were able to save money?
Yeah, so we were paying, of course, we were producing way more trash at that time. So we were paying it was like $600 a month for trash at one of our locations only. And then that went down to about $350 once we started composting.
Wow.
Yeah. And then so we have one tote in Salem from Black Earth Compost, and that is $70 per week. We get it picked up once a week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are you able to kind of talk about the concerns of how you guys had to work through when it came to contamination of the compost?
Yeah, there were a few weeks that the bin was contaminated, and Black Earth let us know. And the first couple times they did take the bin, and then once we had to kind of sift through it and remove the contaminated items. But once we taught everyone at the restaurant, what can go in and what cannot, yeah, it got much better.
Awesome. Then my last question for you is, when it comes to the customers that actually dine into your establishment, and when they actually throw out their refuse, if they're there, was that an issue to kind of let the customers know?
Yeah, that's actually still an issue, because we just have we kind of Mickey Moused 3 bins. So compost, trash, recycling. And at the end of the night, we would sift through it to make sure that we didn't contaminate the bigger bin. But you kind of have to guide people. You have to really guide them. It's not easy, but it's doable.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Varela. Just a couple of questions. Do you currently use compostable materials for takeout?
We do. We use compostable forks, to-go containers, and napkins.
I do know that because I do frequent your place, and I'm very curious about why you would have any leftover food since it's so delicious.
Yeah.
But I do feel like, do you feel that over time customers have gotten more savvy about what they should put in the containers?
Yeah, the regulars for sure. I mean, it's mostly takeout, but the people that do frequent the restaurant, they're really excited about it. Most people are like very excited that we're doing that. Yeah.
Councilor McLean.
Thank you, Chair Varela. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit more to the contamination issue in terms of what have sort of been the most common pitfalls that you guys wrestled with along the learning curve? You know, what is it that people seem to think they can put in there that you can't?
Well, for us, so we use, avocados, and each individual avocado has a sticker on it. So you have to remove the sticker, which was, some of our employees didn't want to do that, but we started doing that and it was fine. But we have to push our bin outside at the end of the night and put it in front of the restaurant. So sometimes people walk by and put like random stuff in there. So we have to sift that out. But lately it really hasn't been much of an issue at all. And everything else we use there is pretty much compostable. So.
And how did you go about educating your customers who were dining on site about what they should and shouldn't be putting into the bin? I mean, obviously your employees you can talk to whenever you want.
So we just laminated a piece of paper that said very clearly what can go in and what cannot. It's pretty straightforward. The taco is just one container. Napkins and forks can all go in the same bin.
Right. So because all of your materials are compostable, essentially everybody's able to put most of their food waste right along with the container right into the bin.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Thanks.
All right. You could state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Patrick Schultz. I'm a co-owner of the All Souls Lounge at 282 Derby Street. And I'm here to support this ordinance wholeheartely. It's about time. If municipal government doesn't step in to help drive these sorts of programs, it's not going to happen on its own to the extent that would actually make a significant difference. We have all compostable takeout materials right now. That's where the cost comes in, right? The cost doesn't seem like it should be a factor in anybody's decision, whether or not they like this program or not, in terms of just, because as Kathleen clearly stated, they're saving money because their weight in trash has gone down and their compostable weight has gone up. And it sounds like Black Earth is fairly reasonable in what they're charging as well. So we're 100% behind this, 100% behind this. Our problem is not going to be cost. We were able to absorb the cost of the containers and the forks and knives and everything that is compostable. But we just adjust costs elsewhere. We try not to pass anything on to the customer, but if you have to do that for kind of a larger purpose, that's appropriate too. Our issue is going to be space. Where do we put, how do we separate? We have a tiny little space. And so how do we figure that out? But, that's just geometry, we'll figure it out. The training's not going to be hard because we don't do takeout really. So it's all in-house. So it's just the employees managing the separation of trash and compost and recycling. I would encourage that in this ordinance, if I missed it and it's not already there, that landlords be required to provide space for the bins. I know, and we don't foresee a problem with that, but I know other restaurants do have outside space restraints, and so the landlord's going to have to kind of step in, at least at the level of cooperation. But there needs to be some sort of mechanism too to require that landlords help establishments, abide by these new rules.
Thank you for that. I know we did discuss that, Mr. Schultz, as far as a requirement for landlords. And I think this is definitely something we need to at least include or address, because if our landlords don't allocate space, how are our entities going to compost here as well? Are you able, because I know you have a mixed, you share trash with another couple establishments.
Yeah.
Do you see any concerns with that?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, this is the kind of the beauty of the city driving this issue, is because if we're all required, we already share the cost for the trash and the recycling, right? So we don't each have our individual separate bins. We have a combined bin and we share the cost. So we would do the same with composting. And in fact, BitBar, our neighbor on one side, has already begun to compost. They have compost bins in the back. And then there are a couple of other restaurants, Jody B's next to us on the other side. I think they would be all about this program. But again, there just has to be some help in facilitating, facilitating kind of the effective implementation of this. I don't really know of anybody who is opposed to this. There may be employees, in our establishment that are going to groan like crazy as they go through the process. But we'll figure it out, and before long, like with Spitfire, it'll be routine. And I do anticipate people will make cost arguments, but I just don't, see where they can. To add another layer of things to do and of organization. Restaurants, from our perspective, I mean, they're already so complex. You have 1,000 balls in the air at any time anyway. So just to do something like this would be pretty easy.
Excellent. Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Varela. To you, to Mr. Schultz. As with Kathleen, I can't understand why anyone has leftover food at your place. I know, especially, I've never left any grilled cheese sandwich on my plate. I have a couple of things, and maybe you could give us your perspective on this. So the first one is, in my mind, maybe some of the establishments or shops that would be a little bit resistant, maybe because they're maybe used to an older, system. And, just like when we dealt with polystyrene or styrofoam, they weren't aware of other, means for takeout or whatever. So they may not be as, I don't mean this in a negative way, as enlightened about recycling or composting as, people like you guys. Do you think that might be an issue with some of the maybe shops that have been around for a while and people haven't maybe explored new things?
I mean, it could be, but, kind of, if it's an outdated, older way of thinking, if it's antiquated in a way that kind of harms the larger environment, it has to change. So, there are habits that have formed,
right.
But, that's okay. It's just a matter of kind of simple training and then some monitoring of implementation, and also some fairness in allowing restaurants to figure it out, and for the city or whoever is kind of managing this or overseeing this or whatever, to not come in looking for issues, right? If they come in as a partner, trying to help us solve obstacles that we're facing. And like I alluded to earlier, different restaurants are going to have different obstacles. Some of those are going to be personnel. Some of them are going to be space. Cost is not going to be one. And especially in light of, at least in our case and in many other, cases for restaurants, the city has kind of bent over backwards with the outdoor dining and other ways, for us to increase our revenue, right? And make more money, hire more people, these sorts of things too. So, in terms of just an ask from the city, this is easy.
So I just want to follow up on something you said about not passing costs on to the customer. In my previous life, I sold a product to Walmart, who I didn't feel was all that environmentally aware. And they put all the onus on the vendor to make their packages super sustainable. So even though they didn't incur a lot of costs, they then promoted themselves as a sustainable retailer. And I've seen that even in Salem. It's not just Cambridge or whatever, but I've seen in Salem places that serve food or beverages that advertise all our containers are compostable, or that they're environmentally friendly place. And I do believe that in many cases that they might charge a little bit more because they're attracting a customer base that may want to go to a place and purchase products and services that are more environmentally friendly. Do you feel that might be the case going forward and expanding, as people learn about things?
Do I think it might benefit business? Is that what you're asking essentially?
Benefit, or that businesses can maybe slightly increase the cost because they may be able to promote to a customer base that's more interested in this.
Yeah, sure. I think that's true. I also, though, think that costs can be managed a little bit more fairly in terms of what businesses in general charge for their products, right? I mean, we've seen an increase in prices, across the board, not just in restaurants, and everybody says, well, inflation's driving this. Well, yes and no, right? There are still some choices, right? You can still, adjust costs as you can still be reasonable, and you don't have to jump on the inflation kind of bandwagon and use that as a convenient excuse to charge people more, right? I think a lot of that is disingenuous.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz, for your time.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
So before I open it up to participants in Zoomland, I did want to mention that there's a couple things that are kind of driving this and why I felt appropriate to introduce this. One being that the Massachusetts food waste disposal ban, effective November 2022, the threshold went from 1 ton to half a ton of food waste. So if you are an institution, a business, you're required by mandate and state law to have and adopt a composting program. So I believe this is appropriate. And furthermore, I did have a conversation with one hauler in general, Black Earth Hauler, which does service our area. And I wanted to make sure, talking to Connor, the owner, that if this is something that we were to implement citywide in our businesses, would there be a concern for not being able to keep up? And I was assured by Connor that that wasn't the case. They are ramping up their production. Next year, they are actually leasing another site in Manchester by the Sea as well. So that's just telling me that when it comes to the composting industry here, it is a growing, budding industry. I hope to see more haulers with site assignments in the Commonwealth adopt this, because this is also can be a revenue producing situation as well, like Councillor Cohen said. There is a void here as far as food waste diversion. So with that, if anyone on Zoom land would like to raise their hand to speak, this would be your opportunity. All right. So I want to start with Karen Kahn. If you can state your name and address, and you should be able to speak. Oh, 1 second, Karen. Let's see here. Can you speak for me, Karen? See if we can hear you. 1 second, Karen. We're having trouble here. Unmute or mute it. It was. Oh, there we go. Okay, Karen. I think we're ready for you. Yes, good. Thank you.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
So, 17 Sutton Avenue. I want to express my full support for the ordinance. I really appreciate Councilor Varela for your introducing this. There are a few things I just wanted to say in terms of context, some of which have been alluded to, but one of the issues that I think is really important for us to understand is that how much food is wasted. 1.3 billion tons of food is lost or wasted across the world, and this is just a great way of helping with that issue. Instead of just throwing everything out, we return it to the earth and we enrich the soil rather than burning it or filling up our landfills and having more, as Jeff said, methane leaking into our air. So that, and another issue that we rarely talk about is global soil erosion. And again, this is, it's a way of attacking that problem to create more compost that will enrich our soil and mitigate that problem for our small farmers and for our gardens. And that this is a really positive approach. One thing I wanted to just add is that as somebody who lives in Salem and uses Black Earth, we have reduced our trash by at least 50%, maybe more, just in a household of 2 people. And so I really would encourage you to, if this is successful, to think about, as we enter the new trash contract, considering how we can incentivize composting among residents, because I think it really could make a huge difference environmentally. And I do think people would do it if they were educated about it and understood how much impact it really can have. It really, with recycling being a rather poor system right now, composting could have much more of a direct impact on our ability to enrich our environment. So I would really encourage, reducing our trash stream through composting, incentivizing that through maybe a pay-as-you-go program for trash or something like that, that would give people the benefit of choosing the right path. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. All right, next we have John Hayes. Let's see.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Andy and Councilor Varela. I wanted to zoom in today. Sorry, I missed your intro, so I got here about 6:15.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes. Can you just state your address for us?
Oh, yeah, and I also don't know why I don't have I'm at 13 Hancock Street in Salem. Homeowner. So I'm calling in to support the ordinance. My wife and I did the composting with the pilot program with Black Earth by the city when it was initially free, I believe, for the first 6 months or something. And then when it became that you had to pay, we just, of course, continued it. We believe in all the environmental merits of composting. Like Karen Kahn just said, reducing the waste stream. We noticed the same thing in our household with the great reduction in trash volume when we began to compost. I happen to be chair of the city sustainability committee, and we have given our support to this ordinance. So I don't know if that was in the introduction by you, Councilor Varela, or not, but just in case there's more public here. So the sustainability committee heartily endorses a composting ordinance with the business sector. And I also agree with Karen Kahn that the more we can do to incentivize more of the residents, renters and homeowners to compost, that would be beneficial, I think, in so many ways. There's so many. I'm a professor at Salem State, and we talk about co-benefits. There are so many co-benefits to just the action of composting, in terms of mitigating climate change is a wonderful co-benefit. Reducing trash volume that the city has to haul away. So anyways, I don't want to take too much time up. I applaud the subcommittee for designing this ordinance and really hope it's successful at the greater city council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Anyone else in Zoom land would like to speak? Here we are. Let's see, Ms. Gozemba, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, Councilor Varela and members of the subcommittee. I am the co-chair of Salem Alliance for the Environment, and I want to say that SAFE is definitely behind this ordinance, and we're very grateful to you for bringing it forward. I am both an environmentalist who cares very much about the atmosphere and emissions, and the idea that food waste from our home at in 17 Sutton would be sent over to Wheelabrator in Saugus and burned there, and further polluting environmental justice communities in Revere and Saugus and Lynn in particular. Not that the pollution doesn't waft our way as well. I think is really very problematic, bordering on criminal almost. And Karen Kahn mentioned before that in our household, we have enormously reduced the amount of trash that we put out in our bins every week. So in terms of reducing emissions, and really, I think that's a number one priority for me. When it gets either burned or put into landfills, I think it's problematic. I also want to say that from being away from Salem for 5 months and being in an environment where in Honolulu, where we noticed where there is no composting there except composting in community gardens, that we would make the effort to drive to when we were going by the community garden to make sure that we could dispose of our compost in the community garden compost pile. And that made me feel good. But again, it's really sad that we had to drive our compost. Granted, we didn't make a special trip for that, but we had to drive it to an area where they would take care of recycling that composted material. The other thing is I'm a gardener and a miniature farmer, not of the Maitland Farm stature, but certainly I love growing my special tomatoes in my yard. And the kind of soil that gets that gets regenerated from composting is really important. And I think we should find strategies to encourage more people in Salem to do the composting if possible. So I think both in terms of economic savings and in terms of preserving the environment that we have, that we definitely should be encouraging other people to compost and so giving them the supports that we can to make it possible. So thank you very much for all of your work on this. I truly appreciate it. And I hope you understand that environmentalists in Salem, particularly folks in SAFE, are very grateful to you for what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Now, Flora Tonthat.
Hi, Flora Tonthat, 30 Northeast Street. I am in full support of this composting ordinance. As I was, part of Salem Recycles when the pilot program was rolled out. And, I have a small business, the bed and breakfast. And in the winter, because, it offsets so much trash that I usually only have like 0 to 1 bag. I don't have to take out the trash, which is great. But I do have like a small compost bin in the kitchen next to the sink, and the guests, they see the note and they see it, and they put their food scraps in because so it educates every guest whether they need it or not. And I think it is great. I just heartily agree with everything that previous folks have said about how good it is. There was I do have a comment about the setting aside a space for the compost, because I won't name any names, but there was a business that had really, great effort, with composting containers and spoons and, all that. But they all wanted this plastic bag lined trash. And I was just going, that's such a waste, it's like all this resource going to the trash. So maybe it's because they didn't have room in the back, for composting. They all had to go in the trash. I don't know what the deal was, but it was really bothersome. But I really, truly support this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Flora. Next will be Julie Pottier Brown.
Hi. Thank you, Councilor Varela. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. And subcommittee, I did not hear the first portion of your presentation, but I want to thank you for bringing this ordinance forward. I see that I'm on here as my business name, Farm Direct Co-op. I did not mean to do that. I live at 2 Gedney Street
Julie,
Court.
real quick, can you state your address for the record, please?
Yes, 2 Gedney Street Court in Salem. So I am speaking in favor. I'm not going to take a lot of time because everyone who spoke before me said pretty much everything that I would say. That I participated at the residential level with Black Earth even before the free pilot program in the city, and I still do. It does reduce the waste that goes away. What Pat said, that this would go over to get burned, is just abhorrent to me. I think there would be some level of education needed for this at the institutional level, but humans learn. It is what we are meant to do. So I think it is possible. And I also think that there's probably a good portion of businesses that need a little guidance, and they need this little push. They want to do the right thing. I'm sure there might be some pushback. However, I do believe that there are probably ones who just need to be shown how, and that it can be incorporated into what we do. I have a large party every summer, and I always set up, this is recycling, this is compost, this is trash, and trash is the smallest portion of that part of the disposal process. So thank you for bringing this forward. I am in favor.
Thank you, Julie. Next will be Bonnie Bain. If you can state your address for the record, please.
Hi, Bonnie Bain, 22R West.
Oh, sorry, Bonnie. One more time. Oh, Bonnie, you're muted. Sorry, I accidentally muted you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
22R West Avenue. I have been really looking forward to this day that we see a composting ordinance in Salem. I'm a transplant from California, and wherever I lived there, maybe I just got lucky, but it was just part of our municipal process to have compost be part of everyone's trash pickup. So I was a little surprised that that wasn't more integrated here in Massachusetts, and I'm really proud that Salem seems to have the energy and eagerness to make a shift and make a statement here. So just really grateful for all the work that has been put into this. Spent a lot of time on the recycling committee, and we tried to do what we could, but this is really necessary to move us forward. So thank you so much, and in full support.
Thank you, Bonnie. Okay, it seems to be everybody. Before you go, Mr. Cohen, Councilor Cohen, I did want to mention that a lot's coming about cost with this. And after talking to a couple larger restaurants, specifically Finn's Sea Level, Siri Keyser, as well as Matt O'Neill of Ledger, Sea Level has tried this in the past. I would say about 4 years ago, they did try to compost, only because the rising costs of their solid waste contract was going up out of control. And they ended up, I believe, dropping the program, not because it didn't work, but it just seemed like it was maybe too early in the conversation with the access to the haulers. But it seems like Siri is willing to give this another shot. He does believe that this is something that not only will benefit his business, but the environment as well, and that they have a responsibility. After speaking with Mr. O'Neill of Ledger today, he's informed me that his solid waste contract over the year has gone from $1,500 to $2,500 in the last couple of months. So within this conversation, the benefit is cost savings. As we know, hauler fees are based on trucking, and trucking is not getting cheaper. So I really think this is a good start to a conversation concerning composting. And the bigger discussion is going to be, what is the city of Salem doing with their solid waste contract come up 2025? So I believe that these conversations are warranted, and we need to start them now before we kind of get caught and it's too late. With that, Councilor Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Varela. A couple of things. Following up on something Ms. Bain said about her coming to Massachusetts. So when I was the recycling coordinator, I learned that New England, which many people think is a very green region, is absolutely the worst region in the country as far as diverting waste. So this goes back to 2015, and we were diverting about 18% of our waste. Austin, Texas was doing about 40%, Seattle 65%, and San Francisco is over 90%. And there's also people from other countries are in a much different cultural regiment where, here in the United States, we want someone to come to our house or business and pick something up, and we don't want to clean it. We don't want to take the labels, do whatever it takes to make sure it's not contaminated. But in many countries, in Europe and other parts of the world, people are used to bringing their waste and separating it. So I do want to mention that. We talked a lot when I was in the job about residential composting, and communities like Manchester have it as mandatory. But I'm very concerned in Salem. Councilor Varela and I have talked about this. I do want it to be on our radar and something that we use as a goal. And I think starting with municipal properties and businesses might be a good way to educate and get us there, especially when the schools adopt the program. And part of that is that we do have we have neighborhoods that are very dense, and people may not, it's a lot easier to convey these kind of programs when you have a lot of suburban single-family homes. I do want to make a couple of suggestions. Chair Varela and I spoke a few times before. Obviously, in writing an ordinance or adopting an ordinance, we're not going to commit to any specific vendor. However, we do want to have a meeting, and we'll have it off-site before we reconvene the subcommittee, because we have some ideas about how we can convey this so that a vendor can realize enough revenue and profit to significantly offset any increase in costs, to do the pickups. For example, when I ran the Solarize program, this was not a guarantee like a mandatory composting program, for businesses. But whatever vendor was chosen by the city and the state to be the Solarize vendor, contractor, installer, they knew that they were going to get, based on history of other communities, a certain amount of installations. And so the cost to the consumer, whether it was a business or residential, was in many cases 40% less. And that's because they knew that they could buy using economies of scale. And what I'd like to do is, Councilor Varela and I spoke before this meeting, is for us to have a meeting with someone like Black Earth and kind of go over that program, because they would be guaranteed 60 restaurants or whatever it is in Salem, all the municipal buildings outside of the schools. I do want to make a motion. I don't want to, I will make a motion after we've all deliberated here to keep it in committee so that we could potentially bring a hauler in so that we have the whole committee and we can go over the language, line by line as we've done before. But I do want to move that we add one line to the ordinance, and that is that it will go into effect 12 months and 1 day after the ordinance is passed on second passage. So I am going to make that motion right now.
All right. We had a motion from Councilor Cohen that this ordinance be effective 1 year from second passage?
1 year and 1 day.
1 year and 1 day from second passage. Seconded by Councilor McLean. We're going to vote on that? Yeah. All right. Councilor McLean?
Yes.
Councilor Cohen?
Yes.
And myself as a yes. Matter carries, 3 votes including my own. And Councilor McLean.
Thank you, Chair Varela. Just going to pick up on some of the points that have already been made. I think the environmental benefit of adopting an ordinance like this in terms of diverting solid waste from our trash stream, from our landfills, from our incinerators, and turning our food waste into usable organic material is pretty self-evident. Even in the absence of the climate crisis, I think that would be self-evident, but it's especially urgent in the context in which we exist now. I am not going to lean too far into speaking to the cost considerations for individual businesses, because I imagine that's going to be different on a business by business case. But I do think that Mr. Schultz's earlier comments about the need for an approach that is collaborative, both in terms of how the city works with our businesses, as well as how we approach the actual property owners in which a lot of these businesses operate, is a really important one, because oftentimes it is really a matter of logistics and space constraints, especially where you are talking about many locations which have established a configuration for the collection of trash and recycling. And so I think adding additional bins and devices, not only inside these spaces, but for the sort of mid-tier collection points, right? For the dumpsters that you're tossing your waste into when it leaves the actual restaurant spaces is going to be a really important conversation. And I agree with Councilor Cohen that having the opportunity to have that conversation directly with the haulers and collectors and get some education about what kind of equipment can be made available to facilitate that is going to be really important. As well as being able to take advantage of those economies of scale, which were referenced. I think adopting a requirement municipally along with for our businesses is really important because it allows us as a city to help them take advantage of those economies of scale and say, we also are going to be sort of a guaranteed outlet for you. And so let's work together to make sure that we can support the business community as they enter this situation with us. So just wanted to pick up on those few points, but I'm certainly in support of moving forward with this and continuing to craft it in such a way where it's going to be effective and something that we can be proud of.
Thank you, Councilor McLean. And before we move on to the second motion, I'd like to say that, this is an ongoing conversation. We really need more participation from our business community on this matter. And as well as like you guys both expressed, bring in the haulers, figure out the details of this. So I'm looking forward to extending this conversation as I feel like this can be a real impact to our city. So with that, Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Varela. One more point. Although we can't put this in the ordinance, I do want to make sure, and I know you'll verify this, that when any application or RFP goes out for whatever, hauler or contractor we end up with, that their outreach to the community is considered. One of the reasons we went with, one of the many reasons we went with Waste Management is that they committed to an education program. Sometimes as simple as putting a sticker on a bin, and sometimes, participating in the farmer's market or whatever. And I think there's no reason that our hauler shouldn't be helping us and helping our trash reduction coordinator in the same way. But I'm going to move that we keep this in committee, and once we've had the appropriate meetings, that we have a meeting soon as possible so we can get this in front of the council.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Cohen. So with that, Councilor Cohen has a motion that this remain committee, seconded by Councilor McLean. Councilor McLean?
Yes.
Councilor Cohen?
Yes.
And myself as a yes. That's 3 votes. It'll remain in committee. And if I can have one more motion. A motion adjourned by Councilor McLean, seconded by Councilor Cohen. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting? Matter carries. Thank you, guys.